Dum da dum. I feel like there should be some trumpets. Although trumpets weren't really a 19th century thing. So if you Google the word shirtwaist, this is the image that comes up. And I was thinking about recreating one of these just to give you an idea of how to connect lace when you are only working with something like this. Maybe this is about 1 inch in length. So let's get into a little bit of Edwardian fashion history. The wearing of the tailored suit about the mid-19th century made the separate tailored blouse a necessity. Thus, about 1890 and the early 1900s, the shirtwaist tailored blouse varied in styles, from the ultra-feminine with elegant lace applied to chiffon, wool, or fancy silk, for example. It could be elaborately designed with lace, tucks, column necklines, gathering, Lego mutton sleeves which would eventually slenderize with the passing of the era, yokes, fullness over the bust, also known as the powder front, which was a very distinct look of the period. But these elaborate waists were suited for the well-off women of the period who could afford to wear them with skirts and jacket costumes that were also very important during the time. Now, there existed the semi-tailored and the strictly tailored shirtwaist too. These styles were modeled on menswear shirting and adopted the stiff collar and button-down cuff details. These two types of blouses could be cut in medium to heavy fabrics like linen and percale, but also muslin too, which is what I used for my shirtwaist in this video. Now, a muslin shirtwaist was considered an economical buy, yet as a staple garment piece and necessity in Edwardian women's wardrobe, it was a budget fashion solution. A 1905 article in the Delineator magazine, which was a very popular American women's magazine that was published by the Butterick Pattern Company, who was still in business today, whom you may be familiar with if you purchase commercial patterns at Joann's, let's say. They described the shirtwaist need/obsession in an article titled "The Shirtwaist Habit." There is always room in her wardrobe for one more shirtwaist, no matter how complete her stock may be, the endless possibilities for originality in adapting them, that the temptation is constantly before her and the average woman succumbs. Women valued it for its function and versatility. The shirtwaist became a fashionable and popular item of the era. It had workplace appeal. It was popular with sportswear, which was now coming into greater appeal amongst women, evening wear, but also it was comfortable enough to be worn for housework. It could be worn jacketless and tucked into the waistband of a skirt. It was sold as both an individual piece and as an ensemble. But at the height of the Edwardian period, it had become an all-occasion blouse with its array of styles and colors as designers and homemakers began adding lace and frills to embellish the iconic blouse. Now, if you want to know more about how to dress Edwardian style or in the shirt, waist, and skirt styles, then watch the video I have here, because I run down how to dress Edwardian from head to toe and how to do it historically accurate. So this is the neckline here, and I'm going to measure the center front with the amount of lace that is needed. Now, because there's already seam allowances on the bodice, I'm just going to measure exactly from top to bottom. and cut without pulling and stretching. And so I'm thinking that this isn't very attractive. And perhaps maybe binding some lace may be a little better of an idea. So not to be wasteful, I'm going to show you this technique on some remnant fabric that I have with the actual lace. So let's pretend this is some part on your pattern where you are going to be inserting lace. Now you will put the lace on top of the fabric, and if you need to, you can pin this down. But we're going to start by running a zigzag stitch throughout both sides of this lace. And make sure to try and catch every single one of these embroidered holes here, if you can see that. Okay, so make sure that you set your machine to zigzag stitch, and make sure that you are using at least a 60 weight thread and a 60 or 70 micro needle that's used for lace. So this is one side. Now we're going to switch over to the other and do the exact same thing, a zigzag stitch. Okay, so now that you've sewn down both sides of the lace, you want to turn it around and you'll see the two stitch lines. From there, you want to find the center and cut along that center line. So just for show, the center here, it's about here. So now that you have cut down that center, you are going to fold back at that seam. This would be a good time to iron back. You are going to do another zigzag stitch on both sides to secure the lace and the fabric. And lastly, cut away at the top of the zigzag stitch at the back, as close as you can, right near the points of the zigzag. Do you see the zigzag stitch? I am going to, right at the tip, cut out the seam allowance. Now, there is a roll and stitch method that you can use that is an Edwardian technique that would work really well here, but because I've showed you this one method, I can't really do both. But I will be doing some stitching techniques that were used during the Edwardian period in separate videos. I don't know why I'm using these scissors. I have smaller ones. So if you have smaller ones, do use those. And there you have it. That is the back, and this is the front. Any case, what do you think? Isn't this pretty? You could use this as a detail, perhaps on a wristband, on the neck, on the yoke. Oh, I just love this.
Lace insertion onto a shirtwaist should be set in before the seams are joined. Make sure thread and lace match in color so to eliminate any heaviness. Once attached, iron press lace flat using low heat to attain a beautifully finished appearance.
Lace by this time period came in a range of types and, dare I say, were available for applique to the shirtwaist. Chantilly lace, Irish lace, Valenciennes lace, machine lace like Limerick. But actually, let me back up here, even Valenciennes lace too, because although this lace reached its impetus by the 17th century, at the 19th, 19th, this once bobbin lace creation was now being made by machine, and machine lace changed the lace pattern game during this time period. There was now numerous designs in contrast to centuries prior.
So this is what I've got here. I did change the center front detailing. I added a small tuck in the center and just gives a little bit more visual interest. Now, pin tucks are historically accurate and were commonly seen in shirt waists,
also known as nun tucks during the Edwardian period. So tucks were made easy with the invention of the sewing machine, hence why they were very popular as ornamentation during the later half of the 19th century and into the early part of the 20th century, especially in fine linen or cotton fabrics cut for shirtwaists and many other Edwardian period garments. But in sewing, a tuck is a fold in the fabric that is sewn or hand stitched in place. When tucks are narrow and thin, they can be called pin tucks, and it's a darling detail that can add texture and creativity to an otherwise boring garment, just as I did for the shirtwaist in this video. But as an added bonus, it can also help to create shape in a garment. Now, do use pin tucks for insertions on shirtwaist, yokes, cut from light to medium weight fabrics like silk, wool, or light cotton for a bit of delicate Edwardian dressmaking.
I went ahead and just did a gather here instead of more additional pin tucks because I thought I would put a small piece of lace here. I decided to steer away from adding a lace insertion at the princess panel.
Measure the lace the same length as the shoulder line and cut the lace away. You will be using the same technique here, and that is running a zigzag stitch along both edges of the lace.
As for thread, it is essential to use the proper thread according to the type of lace and the fabric you will use to fashion your shirtwaist. Let your ornamentation be your guide. Remember that these two embellishments are inserted on the right sides or at the top of your final design, so make sure that the color matches, and so does the fibers of your thread. On another note, at the turn of the century, 3-ply threads were readily available because of the considerable influence of the sewing machine for costume reproduction. So cotton poly threads are absolutely fine and are suitable.
Here I'm measuring the collar with the walking technique so that I can cut out a piece of lace and attach this to the collar seam.
So this could be considered a header. We've got some detailing outside of this header. So I'm going to just sew a straight stitch all the way down so that I can gather it. It's a good idea to pull the strings back here so it'll kind of guide it along, as you can see there. And just really slow, because you want to make sure that you're sewing on the header, because that's what's going to help you gather the lace. Now all you have to do is find the bobbin thread and pull that slightly and adjust, spread as needed.
In sewing lace to the edge of material, it is overhanded or whipped on. to make it lie flat on the edge of the material. In this case, overhanding consists of very small stitches whipped over and over again edges of the material, not for the mere function of preventing raveling, as is the case with overcasting, but to bind two edges firmly together.
Mama,
Yes.
Papa, Papa, Papa.